Capcom released several notable titles during the Dreamcast era. Marvel vs. Capcom 2, Street Fighter 3, and the Power Stone games were among the best known titles that were brought to the console from the arcades. There were a number of lower profile titles that received ports as well though. Gunspike, known as Cannon Spike in the West, was one of them. Gunspike was released in 2000, running on Sega's Naomi hardware. Players take control of one of several Capcom characters. Cammy and Nash from the Street Fighter series appear, as does Arthur from Ghosts and Goblins, Sheba, who's based on a character from little-known arcade title Three Wonders, and Simone, an original character who may or may not be based on Lin Kurosawa from Capcom's Alien vs Predator game. Console players would also get access to Mega Man and BB Hood from Darkstalkers. Each of the characters is equipped with a pair of skates and some guns, and sent out to take on stage after stage of enemies. Players move through these 10 stages, each with a theme. Some of these are quite different from each other and call to mind other games. The Unholy Dwelling stage is very reminiscent of both House of the Dead and to a lesser extent Resident Evil. The first section of the slope stage, and then the lift section of the Geofront entrance levels, reminded me specifically of Metal Gear Solid. The game is played with a combination of the stick and 3 main buttons. The shoot button is fairly self-explanatory, but there's also a physical attack button and a lock-on button. The controls are actually slightly irritating at times. Shooting requires the player to be moving in the direction they want to fire, then holding down the button. As long as the button is held, the character will continue to shoot in that direction, allowing the player to manoeuvre independently of it. This is fairly easy to do, but changing shooting direction can be tricky when you need to do it quickly. The lock-on button helps with this to some degree, allowing you to track specific targets no matter where they go. However, the lock only holds for a few seconds, leaving you shooting in whatever direction it was going at the time. It's a slight annoyance, but one that can be dealt with. Finally, the physical attacks. These often do far more damage than just shooting, but obviously require getting up close with enemies. If you have an opening, especially in bosses, it can make quick work of them, and is definitely the recommended way to take out the bigger targets. Within these simple controls, there's some scope for special attacks as well. Shoot and attack together will trigger a stronger ranged attack, while lock-on an attack will trigger a close range move. All 3 together will activate a character's super special move, though this does require the player to have a special token, which are dropped with reasonable frequency. The primary focus of the gameplay, however, is on boss battles. A varied bunch of robots, tanks, and a few monsters thrown in for good measure. It's within these boss fights that you'll find yet another Street Fighter cameo. Vega appears twice, sporting a more gothic appearance than you would normally expect, and under his Japanese name of Balrog. It's a strange choice, especially as he is the only pre-existing character to appear as a boss. Graphically, it's nothing special. Even compared to its contemporaries, it's slightly drab looking, but it's still technically competent. Enemy designs are utterly forgettable, with nothing of note really standing out with the possible exception of Vega. Sound design is similarly beige. There's little to talk about or commend beyond saying that it doesn't sound bad. So Gunspike is a tricky game to recommend. It doesn't do anything especially interesting or new, and the controls would heavily benefit from a second stick for shooting. If it wasn't for the use of well-known Capcom characters, then I probably wouldn't have given it a second look. It is enjoyable though. It's not a long game and can be completed in roughly 20 minutes or so. What replayability there is comes from the individual endings given to each character, as well as the co-op endings. So if you want to try a flawed, but ultimately fun game, Gunspike is well worth giving a go, if only to see what one of the final Dreamcast games released in Europe was like. Thanks for watching this episode of Arcade Attacks. Remember to like and subscribe to see more of our videos, and to come and visit us at grcade.co.uk.